You're here today to hear a variety of discussions about planned giving. It's something that's very important in the nonprofit community. We know there are some actually other people who are still hanging in here today, so welcome them when they get here. The Catholic Foundation over the years has really demonstrated the desire for us to be good stewards of our donors' charitable intentions, and that's what we're all about. Most people often tend to hear about us or know about us really through Ann's lens, from the perspective of the grants that organizations receive and the good work that happens when the generosity of our donors leads towards grants to these nonprofit organizations. Over time, the Catholic Foundation has granted out $287 million to nonprofit organizations. The key piece is that $200 million of that has been in just the last 10 years alone. So our new annual report, we'll be putting it on our website in about 2 weeks. You'll see that the trend is very positive. Philanthropy is alive and well in the Dallas Diocese. So if anybody ever says, oh no, people don't want to give, people don't care anymore, we're here to say they do care. Last year we granted out over right at about $21 million in grants to organizations, about 880 of them. And lastly, we are the oldest Catholic community foundation in the country, coming up on our 70th year next year, 2025. And we're also one of the largest. We manage right at around $300 million in assets. So the collaboration that we have with our partners and many of you in this room is great and it's wonderful, and we appreciate it, as I said again, you all being here. We'll make today's presentation available on YouTube. We'll put it on our social media. We'll send an email to you soon with a link for today's presentation so that you can share it, and that's what today's really all about, sharing information. Lastly, and I know Mike Murray knows, because Mike, at one point in time, there was another individual who was on a panel, actually with Kris Vetter, just 5 years ago. So welcome back, Kris. It was July of 2019. So we'll meet individuals who later become employees, or they'll meet their bosses. So even after today, continue to have that collaboration, because this is why we call it Catholic Community Network. It's the end piece is the networking and the collaboration that takes place. So we connect worthy causes with generous donors, and that's where today's conversation begins. So let me introduce Kris. I'll introduce Kelly and Michael, and then I'm going to turn us over into the good hands of Michael, who will serve as our moderator. You saw Elizabeth Murray, another senior development officer, on the information. She took a little fall and wrenched her knee up, and so Michael jumped in. So we appreciate Michael for helping out with Elizabeth. So Kris Vetter, she was named CEO of Bloom Pregnancy Help Center, formerly Birth Choice, if you weren't aware of that naming change, on June the 1st. So congratulations, Kris, on your new role. She brings more than 25 years of development and nonprofit experience. Most recently, she was Vice President of Development and External Affairs at University of Dallas. She also, in her academia career, spent time at SMU, UTA, and also served as the Executive Director of Gear Up in Dallas-Fort Worth. That's a workforce development program, and that's how Kris was on one of these panels in July of 2019. She has spent a considerable amount of time focused in this particular area. She has a deep passion for the opportunity to build up the culture of life in the post-Dobbs era, and she formerly served on the board of the Catholic Pro-Life Community. She's the devoted wife of Deacon Paul Vetter. He's currently assigned to St. Rita Catholic Church. They have one son, Noah. He's a junior at the University of Chicago. Kelly Halaszyn, he is our Director of Development for the Diocese of Dallas. This is a position he's held since 2020. He brings 15 years of development and mission advancement experience. He served at the Epilepsy Foundation of Texas. He was at the Straight Jesuit College Preparatory, and also the Dallas Symphony Orchestra, which I like because I have a lot of background with the Plano Symphony Orchestra. He's deeply committed to the advancement of the apostolic mission of the church in North Texas and inviting the faithful into a deeper sense of our calling to Christian stewardship. You'll hear the word stewardship time and time again today. He and his wife Sarah are both alumni of St. Louis University, which is where our CEO Matt Kramer is a graduate from. They have two sons, John Paul and Zachary. They're at parishioners at St. Paul Catholic Church in Richardson, where he is the Deputy Grand Knight for the Knights of Columbus. Thank you, Deputy Grand Knight. He's also a lector and extraordinary minister of Holy Communion. And certainly, last but not least, is Michael George. As I said earlier, he's one of our senior development officers. He's a man of many talents. He's the resident historian and the keeper of important facts at the Catholic Foundation. Don't challenge him in a game of trivia about the Catholic Foundation because you will lose. Michael is the keeper of all that, and we're so grateful. And this is a really wonderful thing. On October 1st of this year, he will celebrate his silver anniversary, his 25th year with the Catholic Foundation. So congratulations. So prior to joining the foundation, he ran the annual appeal at the Diocese of Dallas. And prior to entering the nonprofit sector, he worked a number of management roles at both the Zale Corporation and Saks Fifth Avenue. So at this stage, we're going to just encourage you, be thinking of questions that you want. Michael will serve as our moderator of the panel, and there'll be a couple members of our team who Michael will call up to talk a little bit about additional things that they're working on related to planned giving. So again, thank you for being here this morning. We hope this is a very fruitful, lively conversation. At around 9:40, 9:45, we'll do what we call a lightning round. And so this is not a rolling thunder. This is a lightning round where if you would like to state where you are and let us know if you've got some major news in front of you. You might be hiring. You might be starting a new major initiative. You might have a major program that we want to know about. So we'll do that at the very end of the program. So with that, Michael, I'll turn the baton over to you.
Bill, thank you very much. First of all, Bill says history. Well, there are a lot of people who say civ of useless information. So pick your modifiers carefully. But got to tell you that today it's kind of a classic case of bait and switch. We used Elizabeth Murray to get you in the door, and then regrettably you're stuck with me. But we're going to muddle on here. It's great to have a full house this morning, especially as you get into June and school lets up, and Colin can speak to this. But once you get after the end of the school year, it's like massively, whether you have kids in school or not, people's brains disengage, right? Everybody is on summer break, but it's really nice to see you all here with nose to the grindstone for a program that hopefully, we're hoping will be of help to all of you. So I'm also grateful for my colleagues here with whom we've worked for quite a while. And the subject today that we're here to address overall is planned giving and partnerships that the Catholic Foundation forms with other organizations to help bring planned giving to their worlds. So I think that's probably a pretty good place to start in terms of just kind of level setting. Kelly, can you give us an idea of what's so important about planned giving? Why are we doing this?
Well, Michael and the group here, what a joy to gather here this morning. Greatly appreciate your time and attention, and this is such an important topic. We recognize we all have immediate needs. We all have funding needs to take care of what it is that we do on a daily basis. And I so appreciate, Bill, your comments about philanthropy being alive and well here in the Diocese of Dallas, because it is. We are abundantly blessed to be in North Texas where philanthropy is alive and well. There is a generosity among the faithful that want to make an impact and serve. And I think about the pastoral letter of the USCCB talking about Christian stewardship. And I think that's where I firmly believe planned giving has such an important role. One of the lines in that pastoral letter is, as Christian stewards, we receive God's gifts gratefully, cultivate them responsibly, share them lovingly in justice with others, and then return them with increase to the Lord. I'll say it again. As Christian stewards, we receive God's gifts gratefully, cultivate them responsibly, share them lovingly in justice with others, and return them with increase to the Lord. So if all we have is gift, then we should return those gifts, whether that's through our time, whether that's through our talent, whether that's through our treasure, all that we have as beings, to return that. So yes, we may invest in the causes that are important to us in our lifetime, but even more so important is ensuring that that legacy that we've worked so hard, all of those gifts that we received, are then continued to be poured out. And that's where planned giving has such an important role, is we can continue giving. Even after our passing, we can continue giving of ourselves and carrying on that legacy. And that's where, when I joined the diocese 4 years ago, I recognized we were missing the mark in some areas, and where I said we need to think about this differently. Obviously, in 2020, we were dealing with the height of a pandemic. God has a sense of humor to have me transition from the symphony to the diocese, and I'm very grateful for that opportunity. But recognizing that there was a lot of conversations about our mortality, and that was a reality we were all faced with, and saying, we really need to get on the forefront of planned giving. How can we best do that? How can we best collaborate, partner, ensure that the message is conveyed, that it's not just your will that needs to be done, but it's thinking about your legacy, your own livelihood, and sharing that with your family, sharing that with your communities, and certainly spreading that, all that we have, sharing that. So that's where I've certainly tried to prioritize planned giving, and greatly appreciate the partnership that the diocese has really executed with the Catholic Foundation, because it gets that message out and talks about the collaboration and making sure that the parishes are also talking about it. And all of you that are here to learn a little bit more about it, some of you are already doing planned giving efforts, but hopefully this conversation today causes you to reprioritize that. Because I know how hard it is when you have a bottom line budget that you need to meet, and dollars that need to be raised for the here and now. But we have to keep our eyes on the relationship with our donors, and the relationships that are entrusted to our care. And part of that is inviting them to continue. And how would we do that? Well, we can formalize that with planned giving intentions.
Preach, brother.
Kris, do you have some thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, that's pretty much a master class, in my opinion, on the importance of planned giving. And I just can't say enough how much we're blessed to have you, Kelly, at the diocese. Michael, thank you so much for stepping in. And to all of you, it's a blessing to be with you all today and to be able to share about this really important topic. I mean, it really is in philanthropy and stewardship, something that we all need to be thinking about. I was blessed to begin my career in planned giving, and to have wonderful mentors who would talk to me about, when you think about planned giving, and you think about the relationship of that individual with your mission, they're essentially making your mission, your purpose, your cause, a member of their family. And that's always stuck with me, how powerful and how deeply engaged, and how sometimes we overlook that in this work. We don't think about the level of engagement that someone would have to consider a planned gift. And so I just want to, it's almost like I hear that, maybe it's because of that background that I started in planned giving. It's all these things that people say, oh, you can't think about this because it's not, you've got to focus on the now. I just have never thought of it, because I think the really true, fruitful Christian stewardship that you talked about recognizes that the relational aspect of the work that we do in philanthropy, understands foundationally the dignity of the donor, understands how important our work is to helping to facilitate their vocation, what God called them to do. And so in many ways, I think that's always been in the back of my mind about planned giving. And I wanted to share that because, again, I think it's a tendency, and especially now stepping into this role at Bloom, where we're in a small nonprofit, we have very immediate needs. We're really trying to be on the front line of building the culture of life in our community for the families that we serve. It's really easy for us to kind of just get caught up in the now, but the opportunity to invite faithfully these individuals who want to be a part of our organization in that way into our mission is so important. And I just feel so blessed, particularly at a small organization like ours, where resources are scarce and it's hard, not only the resources to do, but staff time and what have you, to be able to work with the Catholic Foundation. I also just am how blessed we are that it's the 70th anniversary and that you all are the oldest in the country, that we have this kind of resource available to help our organizations. And that's certainly the experience that I've had in just this recent time of connecting with the Catholic Foundation on this topic.
Thank you very much. One of the things that you'll notice is that both Kelly and Kris mentioned the word relationship. And at its best, charitable giving really is about relationship. Planned giving is about making that relationship permanent and having that relationship not just now, but forever. And obviously, both of our practitioners recognize that in their work on a daily basis. Kris, I'm going to come back to you and wanted to touch base with you on how did you come to work with the Catholic Foundation on a planned giving program, and what kind of obstacles did you have along the way in terms of getting to yes?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I appreciate that. So as backstory, I actually had my first conversation around this topic with Matt. So Matt Kramer, the CEO here, had reached out to me, I think when you guys were really thinking about how do we really promote this opportunity to work with our community, when I was at the University of Dallas. And just really grateful that he had opened that door. And then with my transition, I found out that we had a generous donor who had established a fund at the Catholic Foundation, came to talk to Matt, and he said, Kris, this might be an opportunity. And I thought, wow, this is such a great opportunity for us. As I mentioned, being a smaller organization, at that point, Senior Director for Advancement for Bloom, I wanted to, how can we maximize the ability to provide opportunities for folks to engage with us? And so when he raised that option, it made enormous sense to me immediately. And I think I'm in a pretty privileged place at Bloom because one of our core principles is what we call radical collaboration. And when I say that, I mean, just as when we talk about recognizing the dignity of each other in Catholic social teaching, that notion, we look at it, radical collaboration, as not just simply working together for our individual goods, but for the good of the other organizations that we work for. What are their missions? What are their goals? And I think there's a beautiful analogy there with philanthropy as well. How are we thinking about the other in our work? And so, as a core principle, it made enormous sense. And we're very blessed that Ellen Dorn serves on our board. Some of you may know her from the diocese. Has such enormous respect for the Catholic Foundation. I believe she's spoken here several times and said this makes a great deal of sense. Again, because it really is tough to do this by yourself. In fact, Darina, who's just been a wonderful partner in this, she's like, Kris, I know you have this experience and I know you could do this yourself. And I'm like, actually, no, I can't, because we have 1,000 things that we're trying to do. And so the idea of partnering makes so much sense to a small organization. I thought it was great to be able to do that.
Thank you. Kelly, your thoughts?
I think you're absolutely right. It's the challenge of trying to do everything and not able to do all of the things that you want to and need to sustain the organization, especially when there's so many priorities, and recognizing that while you might have the skill set and the background and the experience to be able to do planned giving, the unique opportunity that there is with the partnership with the foundation to utilize their expertise, their collaboration. I mean, they're so current with all of the changes with tax law and other implications that it allows the focus of your operation, you individually or the team that you're privileged to be able to serve with, to really focus on the relationship, and part of that is building that trust. I mean, that's ultimately the relationship, is where you have that mutual trust, and where you can have that conversation with the donor and say, you know what, I don't know the answer to that, but we've got a trusted partner that does, and I'd like to visit with them to talk about how we can formalize these arrangements. And I think that's so important in kind of accepting that your own humility of, you know, what you can and can't do, and the, you know, just the radical collaboration and how important that is, because it ultimately does come back to that relationship.
If I could add one other
Please.
thing, because I think this is a common misperception. In fact, I think both you, Michael, and Darina had raised it, you know, like that kind of hesitation on, well, you know, is it they're giving to the Catholic Foundation, like somehow that's redirecting funds for the benefit of your organization, that they would be doing this. I mean, again, when we're thinking about that donor, we're giving them the opportunity, we're engaging them in the opportunity to be able to connect with their call. But the Catholic Foundation is completely here to serve all of us and to help us grow. So I want to raise that, because I know that could be an objection sometimes that boards might have, this kind of concern of, like, are you somehow redirecting to a different cause? When I think of the Catholic Foundation or community foundations and donor funds, it's more, they're helping those individuals channel their philanthropy. So it makes enormous sense for them to be connected through the Catholic Foundation.
Thanks, Kris.
You bet.
So one of the things the partnership allows organizations to do is to have a plan giving program, to actually have something out there without adding additional staff. And pretty critically important for most organizations, you know, especially those that are really dependent on the regular and annual giving. So Kelly, can you speak a little bit to your experience in terms of how this whole process relates to your donors and prospects?
Sure. You know, I had taken a lot of time considering how best to prioritize the plan giving effort since I started, and said, you know, maybe we need to add a plan giving officer. You know, I had conversations with other dioceses that have somebody that does plan giving. Some of those, it's the diocese and the foundation, you know, that person wears the same hat. And I said, well, we're unique, we're you know, separate in that sense, where you know, the foundation is the foundation and the diocese is the diocese, and we're blessed with that distinction, especially for the donor base, that in many ways see that added value to invest their funds in the ways that they do. So recognizing that we really didn't need to staff up, we had extensive conversations with Michael and Matt and Darina and so many others on the team here, just how can we best execute this to do what it is that we want to do in line with Bishop's priorities, and in line with meeting the needs of all of our parishes. Because we're not, when I say diocese, it's not just the Diocese of Dallas Pastoral Center. You know, we're talking also about the 77 parishes and the 36 schools, right? So how can we best set up a structure that benefits the faithful in all of those communities? And recognizing that, you know, we have a legatum society with the diocese, and many individuals have left planned gifts and bequests to the diocese. How can we better engage them and cultivate the ongoing relationships and prospects to consider the diocese? And so one of the things that we really came up with was, you know, there's going to be folks that want to leave their funds to the diocese directly. There's going to be some folks that may not want to leave the money directly to the diocese and may want to channel it through the Catholic Foundation, because that's how they've done their philanthropy all their life. And recognizing that you have to have both. You know, it's not one or the other. You can't prioritize one or the other. So one of the blessings throughout our extensive conversations on creating the established partnership was, well, let's do both. You know, let's have an endowed fund and a non-endowed fund at the Catholic Foundation to the benefit of the diocese. And those philanthropic priorities are really generic and to the benefit of all of the necessary initiatives, as if that donor had left a bequest to the diocese directly. But obviously the relationship is stewarded in such a way, the funds are protected, and that really has helped us in having those conversations with donors. It's also helped us in the ongoing communication. So we still have a planned giving program at the diocese. We still have our website that has all the tools and resources and send out the emails and the newsletters and whatnot. But in those communications, it's directing folks to, it's not just us, we're in partnership with the Catholic Foundation. And that, I think, really builds that sense of trust among the community. So that's what I would say as far as the partnership and collaboration.
Very helpful. Kris?
Same for us. We just it was such a great opportunity for us to learn that this existed really at the level that it did. I think when I knew that, we hadn't gotten very far in the conversation, and to be able, what you all did was make it so easy. I mean, it was very clearly outlined what that partnership would look like. Very helpful to me to be able to share that with members of our board. There's really an outline where it explains, really the relational aspect is one thing that I really appreciated about it. The relational aspect of not simply starting to promote plan giving and working in partnership with you all, but also to really help invite people into plan giving relationship with your organization. And so making it that easy, especially for a small nonprofit, makes it so much more helpful, knowing exactly what we need to do. And was able very quickly to get our board on board and supportive. Again, I think there was also fruitful, the ground had been laid, if you will, because of Ellen's involvement with the Catholic Foundation. But I find, and we're very early on, we're still kind of finalizing all of our materials, and so we'll be working with the Catholic Foundation. But my experience to date has been so positive in terms of kind of the proactive way in which you all are helping us and serving us and recognizing the needs that we have to be able to lean on the expertise of the Catholic Foundation.
It's a good point. Thanks for sharing that, Kris, because they do make it very easy.
Yes.
And what I personally deeply value is best intentions. We get busy in our day-to-day lives. Michael has a very graceful way of reminding, hey, where are we with this? And does it in a way that is very encouraging and very respectful, but recognizing that it needs to be top of mind. And sometimes it can fall down the list, and the Catholic Foundation makes it so easy with the resources, the materials, the vetting, everything involved in looking at it holistically. And it's not just you, it's Elizabeth too. And there's been some communications that I've sent out, and I bounce it off of her, and she reviews it and says, why don't you tweak this or whatever it is before it actually goes. And how helpful that is, because again, it is that partnership, it is that collaboration. And we're all looking for the same goal. The goal is the advancing of the mission of the church, right? I mean, if that's the goal, we are aligned when it comes to that. And how blessed we are that you all have that expertise, have that knowledge that allows it to be done efficiently, effectively, and collaboratively.
That's a great perspective. Thank you very much. Something that's really interesting is, we talked about time usage. And when you're in ministry, how many of us are in ministry? Raise your hands, that's fine. So we're all in ministry together, right? Well, when you're in ministry, you can spend your time one of two ways. You can spend your time on mission, or you can spend your time trying to figure out how to pay for your mission. And I think that all of us would probably, relatively speaking, would rather spend their time on mission. So, having plan giving, which most times are the biggest gifts that people ever make, and creating that pipeline to support the mission, really prepares an organization to be able to help fulfill their mission even better than they did before. So that's something that's really important. You both touched on the subject of communications and the importance of communications. Let's do a little bit deeper dive on that and talk a little in terms of either how this has already changed the way you communicate with your people, both internally and externally, or how you're planning to change your communications. Kris, let's start with you.
Sure. So again, very early going with us. I think one of the things that was really helpful in the most recent conversation that I had with Darina and Michael was specifically around how do we launch and share this kind of partnership. Because again, I'm immediately going to, we need to let people know, this is something you can do, this is how you do it, and what have you. And what I really appreciate is the wisdom to think about how do you use this as an opportunity to invite them directly into your mission, to have that experience through establishing a legacy circle. So that's, I think, something that's really powerful and just reinforced the sense that I had of alignment, that the Catholic Foundation is aligned with the values and the virtues that we have, which is really to respect the dignity of everyone we serve, including our stakeholders, our donors, and what have you. And really, actually, I appreciate your comment about mission and how you pay for the mission, but one of the things that I really just think is so important and we want to see more of in the culture of life is how do you bring those together and realize that the very people that are empowering that mission are a part of the mission. So that just really aligns, if that makes sense, that the legacy circle as the first step in reaching out is something that we've really taken to heart. In fact, we have a upcoming board meeting and we're talking about that as part of our advancement plan for this coming year. And I again think that is the relational aspect of realizing how can I invite somebody to an event where they can have an experience of the mission, even if they're thinking down the road about, to your point, it's a gift of a lifetime, right? Or making them a member of your family. And I'll just back up. I think I shared this story with you all when I first met you. Again, as I said, I started my career at UT Austin and Plan Giving, and I remember we had an organization called the Texas Leadership Society with their Legacy Circle, and we would bring in a student who was the beneficiary of a Plan Gift Fellowship. So they were receiving their education had been made possible by a Plan Gift that had been made years and years ago, and the donors had passed. And they would speak about their experience, and it was one of the most incredibly powerful things to see. So we had all of these fellows located at the tables, for them to almost literally see the impact of what a Plan Gift that they are making could make possible, because it wouldn't have that opportunity. You know, when you make the gift right then, often you can see, as many of you have worked with your donors, you can actually see the impact, the opportunity that it's made possible. But in this particular instance, they were able to see that. And I just think that was so powerful. So I really appreciate that element of the way that you encourage us to communicate about Plan Giving, at least initially.
You know, I was ready to jump in and get that message out quickly. And, you know, it's so methodical, and it needs to be because of the significance of it. And so we spent a lot of time going through file cabinets of historical records to best identify all the quests that were left. Because while we did have a legacy society and we had some members a part of it, there were certainly, you know, historical records that would indicate that there were more. So how to then communicate with the next of kin that we are moving forward with this and wanting to recognize their family members for the impact that they made possible and the legacy that they have continued to make possible through those bequests. So that was really our step one when it came to the communication was, let's get all our ducks in a row and let's make sure that we are being very thoughtful and methodical with this. And that first step was categorizing and cataloging all of the quests, and whether that was specific to the diocese or to some parishes or schools or specific ministries. And that was a very helpful exercise because we recognized just how much longer the list actually is, and thus the impact that was then made. So that then allowed us as step one to then look at our communication channels and start to calendar those messages out. One of the big successes that we had was, you know, communicating with all the pastors and letting them know about the partnership with the foundation with the diocese. That way the pastors were aware, hey, this is something we should look at too. We should be aware of Plan Giving, you know, and some of them do a fantastic job, and I've had partnerships with the foundation for a long, long time. But just bringing it to the forefront. We recognized that the website that we had for Plan Giving was outdated, so we realized we needed to make some updates to that. Gave us a chance to do a refresh, and that, of course, has driven a lot of increased traffic because the resources are now helpful. And so we sent out an email in April, and it just so happened that the time of the email, my family had dealt with a loss, and the message of the Plan Giving, you know, was download the lesson book to get your, you know, affairs in order for your family members. And I'm like, yeah, I really wish we had that for my family member because there was nothing, nothing at all, and it's been a long 2 months now of not having any records. And again, going back to that idea of Christian stewardship, where everything is a gift, my mom thanked me for all the help that I've given to deal with this family member that's passed. And she said, I don't know how I'll ever repay you or thank you. And I said, fill in the lesson book. I said, fill in these resources, because we're going to be a mess emotionally dealing with your passing when that time comes. You know, but if all of your documents, all of your affairs are in order, you know, we then can grieve and know that that's going to be taken care of. And I think that's so important with the communication aspect, is inviting people to consider it while they can, while they can have those conversations very intentionally. It's a hard conversation, you know, but recognizing that the foundation has the Circle of Life opportunity where that's bringing that to the forefront. You know, just continuously bringing it to light that it's not just the bequest that's important. It's all aspects of, you know, the life of the church, and that includes from the moment of conception to the moment of natural death. And part of that is getting your affairs in order. And I think that's what, for me, has been a really big consolation over the last few months, personally, was just the number of people that then downloaded that lesson book. And we've been able to follow up with. And many of them that have indicated that we're already in their plans, that we had no idea. Some of them that we did, which is great, that we're still in those plans. But, you know, it just drove home that message of the responsibility that we have as church, that we have as leaders of our organizations, to invite people to consider beyond just the financial aspect of it, but just the planning of what inevitably will come. I think that's been so important from a communication standpoint. But that wouldn't have happened without, you know, weeks and months of planning and organizing and being thoughtful with when to send these things out, when to have those follow-up calls, when to, and that's where the foundation has been such a blessing, to slow down, don't just, you know, go crazy gangbusters, but be very thoughtful with how you communicate.
I could make an analogy here too, is that what I hear you say is essentially accompaniment. That the communications are an accompaniment. And in so many ways, all of our ministries, all of us who are involved in ministry, that is what we do. We accompany. And we are called to accompany and to walk with people. And so, you know, I love I actually remember going through that. And so hard is this, that's an opportunity you're providing. The Catholic Foundation is providing, not only accompanying for us as busy, you know, overextended nonprofit ministry leaders, but also the individuals that we serve and that we connect with.
Thank you for that. It's really interesting because you know, having that information out there and having it be consistent and not just a one-time thing is so important in terms of planned giving, because, you know, you could broadcast a message out there and your chances of hitting somebody, anybody, at the exact right time when they're going to be making changes to their will, you know, or changing beneficiary designation of an IRA or something like that. It's that big. So the idea of having this information out there, if you will, is an evergreen, you know, where people absorb it over and over and over again. Well, what that allows them to do is when the time is right for them, it allows them to come back to you and ask the appropriate questions in terms of, okay, how do I be a part of Bloom? How do I be a part of the diocese, not just now, but forever? So that constancy, that consistency of communications is so important. So we're very fortunate on the team at the Catholic Foundation to have a variety of professionals available. And this might be a good time, as a matter of fact, to bring two of our colleagues, Anna LeBlanc and also Darina O'Dowd Padian, into the conversation. Do you have any thoughts to share?
Sure, and I'm going to go to the blue tape that I was told to go to for the video here.
Do you not move from that?
So I've worked with organizations in various stages of, you know, they're starting the partnership or maybe they've been there for a while, but a lot of times, you know, they recognize that they're not the experts, and, you know, we like to think that we are the expert, which we are, and they would call or email and say, somebody just said they wanted to name us in their will, what do I do? You know, it's like, okay, say thank you, you know, here's what you gotta do, here's the language, let me let me send you that language, to the donors, so they can forward it to their attorney, what have you. So those types of real life examples. And we're not trying to do anything without y'all's knowledge. It's a collaboration here. But what we do find sometimes is that donor, when they, we kind of start talking about it, getting into it, they may not just want to support one organization. They've got a lot of organizations that they want to support, so how can we help them support all of those organizations? So that's, I think, what we can add to the conversation there.
That's terrific.
Thank you. Placing on the square. What I do want to say, and I think that there is sort of this conflict a little bit. Conflict's a strong word, but your donors are your donors, and we are an extension of your efforts. We're not trying to replace a relationship that you already have with your donors. The donors that are supporting your organizations will continue to support your organization, and we are just an extension or a partner to help you get to that next step. All current givers, all current supporters for your organizations, hopefully your goal is eventually bring them to being a plan giving supporter. So current giving leads to plan giving. So if you nurture that relationship on your day-to-day basis, those conversations will happen naturally. You've been supporting our organization for 5 years now, or X amount of years. Would you like to consider talking about a meaningful gift that goes past the current annual giving or quarterly giving? So don't feel like it's a question they're not anticipating, or maybe they've been thinking about it, but they really need someone to actually just lay it out there so they can have that conversation. And it shouldn't feel awkward. We encourage you to guide your conversations with your donors. And hopefully there will be that opportunity that they're already thinking about it. They're already trying to think through their estate plans. And if they are generously minded people, they're going to want to support you long after they're gone. So just keep those conversations going, strengthen those relationships, and we're available to help with any questions that sometimes can arise with those types of gifts that are not your check or your cash. If they're complicated, that's why we're here, to help you work through those things. And I know that you've all had situations where there has been an expression of interest about an estate gift. And a lot of times we've heard that the first initial reaction is panic instead of feeling grateful. And it's like, oh my gosh, what do I do? Yes. So anyway, that's one of the reasons why we're trying to educate all of you that we are here to help you. And we do share a lot of donors. That's the other thing. A lot of our wonderful, generous, and that's the theme of our annual report, generosity and generous donors. We wouldn't be here, the foundation wouldn't be here without our donors. But a lot of our donors are your donors. And so there is that sense of security knowing that they're working with you and with us in collaboration with an estate plan. And that's very comforting to a lot of people. So thank you again for coming today. We really appreciate it, and you guys are doing great. Thank you. Can I just say one more thing? Dave Palmer, who most of you know, was the voice of the radio, not the ticket, GRN radio. But Dave and all of us have worked closely with Dave on their plan giving efforts and their plan giving partnership. And he has some wonderful stories, and I know when we go around the room, we'll have an opportunity to hear from Dave. But I think one thing that I can honestly say is Dave did not get discouraged. He kept going with this. It's not something you're going to see an immediate result, because those conversations are planting seeds for a very long time. And you just never know when somebody's going to say, you know what, I'm ready to make that next step. So don't get discouraged. Dave's a great example of just keep trying, and all of a sudden you're going to create a legacy circle, and it just sort of naturally snowballs from there. So thank you.
Thank you.
If I could add something to that Darina mentioned, the fact that current giving leads to plan giving, that's I think pretty obvious. But I heard recently, I was with a group of development directors and organizations throughout the state, and one of the presenters talked about most individuals give to about 15 organizations annually. Now that could be on a varying scale as far as whether that's $5 or $100,000, but most individuals on average give to about 15 organizations. The moment that they signed a planned gift, that decreases to about 7 or 8. But what changes is those annual gifts go up significantly. So it's both and. It comes down to both and the importance of having that planned giving conversation, because it can lead to an increase in your annual funds that are raised, and how great that can benefit all the hard work that's already being done with your ministries and all the work that we do. So I thought that was interesting that I was reminded of a couple of weeks ago. And I might be off with the numbers, but it's something somewhere in that range.
And if I could add one other thing, it's interesting because one of the things that I learned, and again, this was 20 years ago and working in a different, in higher ed, but many times, as much as we talk about current gifts, leads to planned giving, it can go the other way too. There may be somebody who only thinks I can do something for your organization through my estate. Maybe they feel like they're just not in the position to be able to do. And we had several, literally, tens of folks in our legacy society who only gave, or only established and started by saying, I'm going to make a bequest because I want to be a part of your mission. And then ultimately started realizing, I can start doing that now. I can start participating in your organization now. So I mean, again, different industry, but I'm just going to raise the point that as much as we talk about current giving leading to planned giving, at the end of the day, these are ways in which individuals engage with your mission. And so I love what Darina was saying is I think much of what we're saying is we're inviting them, right? And the invitation is something just, it takes time for that invitation to plant, to be planted and that seed to bloom. Of course I can say that. But I think that's really, truly just important for us to think about, that all of these are ways of folks engaging with our mission, and we want to provide them the whole range, the abundance of options and ways that they can engage with our mission, especially when they're trying to really care about what it is that we're trying to do.
Very helpful. Thank you very much for that. So we're having a lot of conversation today, and conversation's great, but it's nothing if it doesn't drive change. And what I want to pose to you both is, it's a little bit of visioning, a little bit of dreaming. So what is the change that you're hoping, planned giving in these types of conversations, what's the change that you hope it will drive in your organizations? So what does it mean to you?
It means a lot. I mean, it really has enormous potential, I think. So we are at, so I'll use a little bit about where we're at as an organization. We have recognized, and I'm going to call out my wonderful colleagues over here at Heroic Media, Mike Murray and Molly Zepeda, is, post-Dobbs for the American pro-life movement, we're at an inflection point where we recognize that it has really changed the way that we engage with families that are considering, facing an unexpected pregnancy or in that moment. And so for us, what I see this as is part of expanding the ways in which we can invite a much broader community of individuals who recognize the value and the abundance of being pro-life, that recognize the culture, that want to be participate in the culture of life. It's another way for them to participate in building up. Many of us have faced a lot of despair, who believe strongly in life when we face things that we see in our culture, and the ways in which, the expansion of the radical expansion, if you will, of access to an abortion through pills and what have you, and people are really feeling that despair, and this is a way that you can channel your frustrations into a proactive stance. In many ways in our field, we've been reacting to Roe v. Wade. Now we have an opportunity to stand up as the church, and that's truly what encouraged me and brought me into this movement in such a powerful way is the opportunity to make an impact, to make a difference, to help be a part of building a positive environment in which individuals can recognize the abundance of opportunities. When you look across our diocese, somebody actually during the coffee session had said to me, you know, I just am so excited about all of the different pro-life ministries, and said, yes, let's pull those together, bring them together, and be able to share that. Well, that's an exciting vision. To your point of vision, that's a vision that folks want to be a part of. So how can we encourage and invite more individuals into that vision of what it is to be a culture of life?
Thank you. Kelly?
Yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you, Kris. You know, again, the way I see this drastically changing in terms of just adding planned giving as part of the conversation is it does drive that deeper engagement with the organization. It drives the deeper engagement with the org, but also within that family unit. So there's a lot of exciting things happening throughout the diocese. You know, recognizing that Dallas continues to grow. When I say Dallas, I mean North Texas continues to grow. You know, we've gone from, I think, 100,000 faithful Catholics in the diocese when Bishop Kelly was ordained a priest, and now there's 1.3 to 1.4 million Catholics in our 9 counties. You know, it's astronomical growth, and there's conversations and projections that in the next 10 years, you know, the Catholic population could be larger than Chicago. That's a strong possibility. So with that comes an enormous responsibility to meet those growing needs. And I think with the synod that will take place this year, really is positioning the diocese as a whole of how are we doing business, and how can we do business, how can we do effective ministry better, where are there opportunities for growth and change and future visioning, to all with the lens of how do we embrace the apostolic mission of the church in the Diocese of Dallas? How do we embrace that apostolic mission that has been entrusted to us, as, you know, entrusted to Bishop Burns as the successor of St. Peter, you know, appointed by Pope Benedict and then installed here in Dallas through Pope Francis. You know, how can he embrace that apostolic mission and invite all of us into that deeper engagement, into that deeper conversion, a better accompaniment as we accompany each other in building up the kingdom here in the Diocese of Dallas. You know, the reality is there's an incredible transfer of wealth that will take place. You know, so how, as good stewards, how do we entrust those resources to the continuing care of all that our families have built up for generations now? And I think that's, you know, one of the change drivers that I'm most excited about is the way that we have done things can very dramatically change and drastically change in the next 10 to 15 years just by virtue of some of these bequests that very well could become realized in the next 10, 25 years and alleviate some of the pain points that we might have in some of our ministries. But the way to do that is having those hard conversations. They're not hard, but having those exciting opportunities to invite that deeper engagement. And I think that's key, is if we don't invite, then someone else is. And that's where it's key for us with all that we believe in our mission and work tirelessly on in that mission is to invite, and they may turn that invitation down, but the key is you have done that invitation. You have done that inviting. And
You've been faithful.
And you've been faithful in your role to do that, and I think that's key.
Thank you very much. As a matter of fact, with the word invite, this might be a really good time to invite the community into our conversation and see if y'all have any questions for our panelists. Does anybody feel compelled to share? Ned?
I appreciate the focus on legacy gifts, but when I think of planned giving, it's a whole lot bigger than just legacy gifts. You know, annuities and all the other financial tools that are out there. when I think of planned giving, it's about a gift that the donor has to plan for. Not that we have to plan for, that they have to plan for. So it could be, a stock gift. It could be that transformational gift. The person who, long before their estate or their passing, they choose to make a transformational gift that helps, not just now, it might be an endowment type gift. But I think that, legacies and bequests are important, and it's always the first thing that comes to mind when you look at planned giving. But I'm sitting here going, with 26 years experience, I've done a whole lot more than just, and always as a sole practitioner, done a lot more with, I haven't seen the bequests. I've seen the transformational planned gifts that have come in.
So if I could speak to that, is, Ned, I'm so glad that you brought this up, because again, we are talking about kind of,
Sure.
I think we have been talking in that space, and most of my experience was more on the much more expertise side, because I worked at a large organization where we were the experts supporting other areas, and often like thinking about everything from blended gifts to annuities and what have you. But I will tell you, I'm going to go back to a very, very basic, situation. In a small nonprofit, that's almost, I think somebody said it earlier, it's almost like, what am I going to do, as opposed to my first initial response going, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And the best example I can think of that, the best story I can give that, at the end of last year, when we were just starting these conversations, I don't know if you remember this, Darina, is somebody reached out and said, I want to make a stock gift to Bloom. And I was like, what do I do? So much so that I emailed Matt, of all people, not Darina and not Michael. I emailed Matt Kramer. And that man immediately, like it was on like Christmas, I think, like emails me back, absolutely, Kris, we can help you here. So I just think, to your point, is absolutely, and what you had raised earlier, Kelly, is the expertise of this team that's really up to speed, that can actually help us be able to execute on those types of gifts is so appreciated. And that's a huge part of what, at least initially, that partnership means, is it's like having these experts on your staff, 70 years, folks, respected experts to be able to help you when you're trying to do the email, you're doing the event, you're doing this, you're making sure your thank you notes are going out, everything you're trying to promote. I mean, there's so much going on, but that level of expertise and current, as you pointed out,
Yes.
Current expertise, because again, I haven't done this in years and years. I was very blessed to have folks that I basically said, oh, okay, let me let you talk to our planned giving officer, but I was not that person in for many years. Did you have anything?
I was going to say, thank you for bringing that up, Ned, because you're spot on. A lot of the conversation obviously was the final gift, but there is so much more, and I think that was key for this group to be able to hear. So thank you for raising that. And again, to what Kris said, the value of the experts in the room with the Catholic Foundation that can help direct and give you the tools, resources, language that needs to be used. And either receive that gift to direct to the organization or help you receive it directly, just based on the language that's then used. And I think that's key, because it can be both. I mean, that's part of it.
I was just going to, and serve that donor, because I wouldn't be the first time. I certainly had that experience in planned giving where somebody came with, this is what I'm thinking of doing, and actually there was even a more effective way in which they might be able to make that kind of a gift. And so we were able to explore the options. And again, I think that's the piece that really is exciting for me about this partnership, is the alignment on how do we serve them? How do we help them realize their call, what they feel called to do in the best way possible?
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And this is just a general invitation. If you ever have a hard time sleeping, I'll give you my phone number, and we can talk about the details of a charitable remainder unit trust with an income makeup provision. So, just a standing invitation, we can definitely take.
I see a new, GRN topic.
Exactly, so, trust me, we can get you to sleep. Does anybody else have any comment?
My question is more probably tactical. I'm the passive emails and the invitation, hoping it catches somebody at the right time. Love it. Sitting down with a donor and asking them for a gift upon their deathbed. Haven't quite figured out how to have that conversation yet without cheering for their demise. So, and obviously, best intentions and humor aside, any advice on just quick, if you're, Darina mentioned it, in the room with somebody, hey, how do we make that transition from an annual gift to upon your passing? Most people in our world are 38 years old, right? They got kids in elementary school. Their grandparents are probably a more fertile soil for some of these conversations, but the relationship isn't quite as strong there. So how do you do that in person, somebody who's been there a long time? How do you make that switch?
Can I add one thing? That's a great question, and I'm going to let him answer. But one point that I want to make is, you mentioned the word invitation. And, you listen for that invitation to be invited into that conversation. They'll give you clues, that you have the permission, to ask that. It's kind of reading the donor, a little bit of it. A lot of it's, there's not really black and white in terms of this.
Yeah.
It's a soft skill, and you kind of have to be invited into it. I'll give you one quickie, and then I'm going to turn it over. Okay, let's say you're in the middle of a capital campaign, okay, and you just asked somebody for the gift, and they're writing the check, you write the check, and they're passing it over to you, and they say, I wish it could be more. Okay, that's an invitation to talk about how they can be a part of the organization, not just now, but forever. And, you don't have to part with it now, but prayerfully consider a gift to Bloom, to the diocese, to the Catholic Foundation, to all saints. So those are the types of things that you listen for. So now I'm going to let you guys answer.
One thing that very early on, Colin, that we would, I was kind of trained to do, and I thought was really important. I love that one, and I've had that experience before, where somebody said this, and you know that they really want to do more. They just don't have a pathway, and so then it's let's explore that. Tell me more. What does that look like? What would you like to be able to do? And then explore that with them. But the other one is really, we used to talk a lot about, you've been making this gift on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis, on an annual basis. You've been so generous to this mission. What would it look like? Would you like to explore the prospect of doing this in perpetuity? Basically, the notion that you're basically taking your annual gift and you're extending it, right? So that, because when you're gone, this would still continue to have the impact that it's had. So I think that might be a way, but again, I always, any time of this, and I really appreciate you starting with that, Michael, it's listening. And, this is a group that's committed to ministry, to the dignity of others, but people do share with you. They offer those invitations, and they're offering an invitation to you. And I really do, I really struggle in philanthropy that we forget that philanthropy means the love of man, and that we think that people are parting with their money and not really realizing the root of what philanthropy really comes from, which is this desire to love man, to one of the great commandments, right? So just remember that. I really want to always remind, in fact, the last time, 5 years ago, I came here, many of you know, I know my dear friend Mike and I both agree on this. If you haven't read Henry Nouwen's The Spirituality Fundraise, please do, because I think he is all about recognizing that individuals have a vocation, and what we're doing is we're inviting them not to part with their money, we're inviting them into their mission. And clearly, if somebody's saying, I wish it could be more, they want to be more meaningfully engaged in the mission.
And even just reframing that in your own head changes the language you would use.
I think that so much, so I'm going to challenge everyone in this room that is in philanthropy, when you hear language like that, not just by yourself, but other people in your organization, remind them of these are people that are committed to ministry. They understand serving others. They understand the dignity of others. We will do a great service to the culture of life. And I mean that in the biggest, broadest sense. If we start to help them reframe and realize those individuals have dignity too. They're not ATM machines. They're people with purpose. And so I think that if we start to reframe that, it will change it for, frankly, our culture.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. So we have time for one more question, and then I'm going to put Dave Palmer on the spot. And, you know, listening to him, I've listened to Dave read the ingredients on a box of cornflakes. So there's never anything wrong with that soothing voice to kind of close up a Q&A session. So does anybody have one more question for us? Yeah, Jacob.
Memento mori. I just can't help but think this is the perfect way to make it all come together, right? It's helping people realize that we're not going to live on this earth forever. Two things that happen that I'm curious if you guys could elaborate on, that I've seen in conversations, very, very loose conversations with my grandma, of all people, and my parents about this topic specifically, because we're a young organization, Guadalupe Radio Network, and we have no plain giving. And I was just, a couple years ago, we were kicking around with our board and some of our staff, like, what do we do to make this happen? I was like, well, why don't I talk to my parents who are on the more tail end of their life, and my grandma, who is very much towards the end of her life. What do I pick their brains on this? And as soon as I brought up the conversation, it created a tension. It was like uncomfortability. And I immediately wanted her to like run away from the conversation. And I could tell they did too. And it wasn't that like I wasn't being charitable in talking about it with them as like an idea. I wasn't even asking them to make a plain gift of anything towards Guadalupe Radio. I was just asking them, what do you think about how we could make something like this happen? And it was almost like this uncomfortability was immediately there. So I'm just curious, how does that get addressed? And for someone who, say that uncomfortability does arise, how do you move them to a place where they can realize that it's actually a good thing to talk about that, like to have that memento mori mentality, as opposed to like this finite, my life is going to end mentality? Because I think that's the tension that I think I've experienced with this.
It's very good.
Topic.
What do you think? Deep subject.
That is deep. I think the reality in that context, right, is I hear that this is an uncomfortable, topic, and now may not be the best time for us to have this conversation, but could we connect again and give it a definition of a time of when we can try to broach the subject again? Because it wasn't a no, right?
Sure.
It was just, I'm uncomfortable. So I would then channel that to, I hear you, right? Because you were inviting to have the conversation. Again, I hear you, now's not the right time to discuss this. But, give that further reflection of, we're going to have this conversation again, or I'd like to invite you to have this conversation again, and put some definition of, we're going to sit down and have this topic be discussed. That's how I would channel that.
That's really good.
You're not going to make any headway when you're that uncomfortable. But saying, give it a few weeks, give it a few months, let's bring this back up. I think that maintains the dignity of the person, and then recognizes that you are very serious about this. One, because it's your own person, it's your own family, but I think it just shows the significance of it, and obviously respecting them as well.
The only other thing I would add is I think, again, the most powerful mentors I've ever had are truly curious about kids, right? They just care. They're very curious, and they genuinely want to hear people. They listen. One of our core values at Bloom is listening aggressively. If you think about the work that we do, right? Which is the notion that you're really listening first is, I would say, what makes you uncomfortable about this?
Well,
So,
one of the things that's really important is realize that you have more time than you think. Okay? As Paul Simon said, slow down, you move too fast. You know, so you've got time to kind of suss this out. You broach the subject, and to Kelly's point, revisiting it later is a very, very good strategy. But relax a little bit. You know, I mean, you've got time. And obviously, if there's a terminal situation, it's a little different. But you know, most of the time, it's conversation. You know, we're inviting people into a longer relationship, so you got time to do this. Okay. Thank you both, you know, for your expertise. And with that, you know, I'm just going to ask Dave. You're used to hitting a post. So, do you have about a minute to share with us?
He has to stand on the book.
Yeah, you need to stand on the book. This is a visual medium as well as a.
Wait a minute,
I'm
I'm
not
on
used to seeing people
radio.
that I talk to, so you guys are intimidating me very much. Normally I'm in the studio by myself. But thank you for all this information. And I didn't take notes, but it's in my head. And nice to see so many familiar faces out there of people that I know. So good to see you all. I guess, gosh, I'm like the last person to speak, and I don't know what to say other than the fact that what Michael said about really we want to do our mission, but the fundraising part is an absolutely necessary part of the mission. I really just want to do radio. You know, that's I got into this to do radio, and I love the faith, and I want to spread the faith, and I'm like, gosh, I got to fundraise. And so that was kind of a learning curve to do that. And then a couple of years ago, when I think Michael first came to me about this planned giving, I was like, like Jacob, what you said, it seemed a little weird. You know, I got to talk to people about dying, and you know, that's very uncomfortable to me. And what you said, Kris, about philanthropy, I never even thought about that. It means the love of man, and people want to give, they want to help, and they want to help in perpetuity. And I think when you get that mindset, it changes everything. And so the only other thing I would say is that I was really, really intimidated to do this because it was so outside my comfort zone when Michael and Darina and Matt first started talking about this. But as Darina said, it's taken time, and it has been very slow, like you just said a moment ago, and it doesn't have to be immediate. And you all have held my hands and our hands throughout this entire process. And I was putting a lot of pressure on myself to get things going, but it goes slowly, and we've seen some fruit now, and we've had a couple of success stories, and I've never felt for a second that the Catholic Foundation was rushing us, you know, to do this. And I'm glad we're doing it. I'm learning. It's something that I don't feel necessarily comfortable with, but as I think Kelly, you said, we don't have to be the experts because we have the Catholic Foundation to help us with it. And so a session like this gets me more emboldened, more encouraged to just keep plugging away. And also, like I think Kelly said, maybe rise it a little bit higher on the priority list because we're all doing 1,000 things. And this is one that I'm like, oh yeah, planned giving. And I never quite get around to it, but, and also I can do it in the course of regular fundraising when I speak. So I loved what you said about somebody, because people have said that to me many times, I wish I could give more. And typically I think, yeah, I wish you would give more too. Yeah, you don't say that. You think it, you don't say it, right? And then that's a great entryway to the conversation. So anyways, those are my thoughts. Catholic Foundation has been more than patient with us. They're friends, they're not just business, you know, colleagues, and we're just going to keep plugging away and hopefully have some success this year. So thank you.
Dave, thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Really appreciate it.